What's up out there, everybody? Thanks for tuning in. As always, first and foremost, definitely have a special message prepared for you guys all today. Special message intended. And as always, it's just going to kind of come out organically like it usually does. Before I start, first and foremost today, I would like to just go ahead and tune in and set a sacred space, do a little invocation for this transmission. Thanks to New Age Jaw for inspiring me to go ahead and heed this call and this feeling that I've had within anyway. So first of all, I'd like to give thanks to and invite in the Holy Eternal Mother, the eternal womb space, both within us and externally. Deep gratitude and thanks to the Divine Mother for providing this space to nourish us for our seeds, our prayers, our petitions, so that they may grow and flourish, receive nourishment and pleasure. Also like to give thanks and honor the Divine Father, the one truth, one light, one point, that source within us and externally as well. Also deep gratitude and thanks to the Divine Child, the Holy Eternal Christic Spiral, that beautiful spiral rose force and pattern that's always bringing us into higher and deeper states of evolution and involution, connecting us deeper into unconditional love and coherence through our hearts and every aspect of our being. All right, that being said, this message today will definitely be somewhat of a continuation, my last message in certain ways, but also definitely some specific topics. My intention is to mainly talk about soulmates, twin flames, twin rays, but there will be, as all my messages have a kind of spiral nature to them, kind of be skipping around and enveloping a lot of other different relevant topics to the collective right now, and just in general. May touch on some astrology things. There is a relevance, of course, to Uranus being in Taurus and all of the different planets that are about to hit that. And there's also some relativity to Mars in Cancer specifically. Of course, everything that's going on, if it wouldn't be relevant if it wasn't this moment, if it didn't correspond to the astrology, but it may touch on how those things are part of the message specifically that I'm getting into. So, first and foremost, I'd like to talk about the idea of twin flames. And twin flames, of course, most people at this point know about a twin flame, especially in the spiritual / quote-unquote New Age community. And I'd just like to start by saying as I originally found out about twin flames, the idea of a twin flame is someone who basically, when someone has a counterpart of sorts that somehow brings them into a state of wholeness or completeness, right? Whether this person is alive or incarnated in this time, space, or dimension or not, that's both their possibilities. But it's the idea that we essentially, as a male or female, have a counterpart that is a completion to that energetic for us that brings us back into a state of wholeness and completeness. Now, I'd like to say first and foremost, I don't subscribe to that definition of a twin flame really at all. It just, especially as we enter into the Aquarian age now, we as individuals, each and every one of us, are whole and complete unto our own self. We are each a multiverse. We are each a universe. And we all each have our own individual internal connection to Father, Mother, God, Source, Creator within us. Now, of course, through our free will, we can make the choice to forget about that connection, disconnect from that connection. There can be trauma, programming, conditioning that come in that sort of cloud or blur that connection or something like that. But we are each whole and complete unto ourselves. And that being said, there are some other definitions of twin flame. There's also the idea of a twin ray, which is slightly similar to twin flame, different, and we're going to get into that as well. But I want to talk about the idea, this other idea of twin flames, or false, what I like to call them is false twin flames, is another definition too. And this really all comes down to the fact that when the idea of the false twin flame comes from the idea of false light, the false light grid, the false light ascension grid. And at the end of the day, the false light is really just that light that happens when we perceive something external to us to have some sort of power over us, complete us in one way or another, or that we need to give power to or have given power to. What do I mean by that? Well, we, when we incarnate, right, we incarnate from Father, Mother, God, Source. Thus, we have that connection internal to us. And everything that we experience around us is a reflection of that light, right? We experience the reflection of our light back to us. Now, I'm not saying that we're the only being here per se, but what I'm saying is that our experience that we experience is our light reflected to us, right? And in that, if there is any God, government, guru, drug, habit, person, relationship, whatever it is, any of these things, if we perceive those things as having power over us, giving our power to those things, or needing those things to complete us in any way, having addiction to those things, the sensations, the experiences, the feelings that those things give us, then that is essentially false light, right? Because really what it is it's tricking us into looking out for a light that is actually projected from within us, right? This is like looking at the mirror and trying to get something from the person that we see in the mirror, when that's a reflection of what we are. We can't get anything from the person we see in the mirror because we are that thing and we're just experiencing a reflection of that. Now, I'm not saying that every single thing in the reality is a reflection of us, but all of our experiences are a reflection of our own light, right? And the angle that we're perceiving that light from. And we'll get into how this comes into play too. But so when we enter, you know, people make prayers, they do manifestations, they do all these different things, and they ask, God, source, creator, universe, whatever, can I meet my twin flame? I want my twin flame, something like this. And anytime we try and manifest anything, especially a person, based on an energy of not being whole and complete unto ourselves, right, which comes from having a broken template within us, because we have this light, like a projector crystal, like a hologram or holographic projector crystal. The light shines through that crystal, which has a lot to do with our DNA being these liquid crystals. That light shines through the template, and then we get back these things based on a broken and incomplete data, corrupted data, essentially, right? And so, of course, the person that comes to us is this kind of like not quite complete person or situation either. And this is a big experience with false twin flames, is there's a lot of overwhelming love, a lot of beauty, a lot of intense, amazing experiences, a lot of super low lows too, like a lot of repeated patterns and cycles of like having these certain issues that can never quite be broken through. It's like they keep coming up over and over again in these repeated patterns and cycles. And of course, this has a lot to do with, essentially, it's a somewhat complete reflection of us, but there's just these little things that are off, right? That keep us kind of grasping at something that is not whole and complete, right? Because it will never come from somebody external to us. It's like trying to once again, trying to get it from that reflection in the mirror. And so these things stay in these spirals and these patterns. Now, the solution to this is to connect to the divine beloved within us. Of course, a true Father, Mother, Creator within us, which is the only real beloved, that only real twin ray and twin flame at the end of the day, that Creator within us. Because that's where we came from, that's where we will return to at one point or another, and it's always with us too. And so getting into a very deep, connected love relationship with that thing, and knowing that we are that thing, and that we don't actually, on some level, we don't actually need something from anyone else. We can't be completed by anyone or anything else. And really any sort of desire that we have, any craving, any seeking that we have, can only be fulfilled by that thing, right? And so that being said, it's also important to understand that this has a lot to do, when we talk about false light, this also has a lot to do with false idols, right? For those of you who aren't familiar, the Bible especially talks a lot about false idols and worshiping false idols instead of the one true God, right? And when I say one true God, as you guys can probably imagine, I'm not talking about some sort of masculine being in the sky or anything like that. In fact, it's not anything external at all. It's just that each of us as individuals has one source, the source within us. And this source is trinary. It's not binary. Of course, it has more fractals and reflections, but it's apparently, primarily trifecta, right? Where a lot of people have a more polar-based system, and I can explain this as well, because this is really important to the entire explanation and the download coming through. So many of us have incarnated into this life coming from a Christic system, a Christic imprint, a perfected blueprint, right, that is connected to source, right? And so we've came in and our light has projected into a system, a crystal known as DNA, which that crystal was broken or degraded or fractured, right? And this is a binary 2-strand DNA system that was founded on being disconnected from source and not being connected to source, right? So a lot of us came into this reality to clean, to purify, to reconnect, to heal that system so that it could be essentially repaired, right? And this is why there essentially is a 3D time matrix, because it's based on those wounds. And so this is where we get the split of basically something based on a disconnection and looking to an external being, right, that always keeps us stuck in those loops and spirals, right? And this is also the tree of life and death, right, as it's called in the Bible, because it's polar. It's a tree of good and evil, right? And that good and evil, as it says in the Bible, thou shalt surely die, right? Well, of course you're going to die, because if you're not connected to that source within, that internal source within, it's good and evil, you're always going to polarize and just get stuck in that spiral, right? Now, the tree of eternal life, this is when you are connected to that neutral pillar within, right? We have the Ida, the Pingala, and the Sushumna, right? Ida and a Pingala, positive and negative, good and bad, good and evil, right? And then we have the Sushumna, which is the neutral middle pillar. That is the trifecta, right? The triple spiral. And when you have Father, Mother, Child, the child is whole and complete unto itself, right? Because in the dual system, you look at a child as being let's say it doesn't have its own life or its own connection to source. It's just masculine and feminine. And then when they come together, there is this like a third thing, but it's like not complete unto itself. So the trinary system, the positive, negative, and neutral, right? The child is the neutral and it's its own whole and complete thing. And coming from source itself, there can only be multiplication. This isn't when we divide from source. This is when we multiply from this eternally abundant source, whole and complete unto ourselves. And a lot of us have come into the system to heal the fractured genetic system that was disconnected from source. And so this system, right, of course, there is this idea of a false idol, right? So what are false idols? Well, false idols are portions, fractured sections of light that are not the one true source within us. And there's nothing wrong with these archetypes or aspects of the divine, right? And all of the planets, all the celestial bodies, these are all aspects of the divine. These are angles, arcs, and angles, archons, angels, demons, right? Aliens, all these different things, right, are all portions, angles of those energies. So you look at a astrology chart and you have all these facets, which those planets correspond to our genetic system in that spiral, right? The planets are literally the genetic spiraling of the galactic forces. And we take, we incarnate and we choose this slice, right? It's like a time print slice of that galactic DNA. And so we incarnate on that spiral, right? And so those aspects, the different planetary bodies and those different things are portions or angles or idols, right? When we are not connected to that Father, Mother, God source within, then we are swayed on this spiral, this polarity back and forth. The movements of the planets and the cosmos are kind of like bouncing us all over the place. And because we have that empty space within us, that space is then open to be filled with gods, goddesses, demons. In particular, there is this idea of what we like to call the black snake. That the black snake is just comes in through addictions, through trauma, sexuality, different things, right? Where there's this empty space within us and it needs to be filled by something that we're like trying to pull in from the external reality, okay? And when we have this empty space within us, when we aren't connected to that Father, Mother, God source within, then we kind of become a vessel of sorts for the God's dramas, or the drama of the dragons, which dragons drama, dragon mama, right? This is all like the black snake, right? And what that really is, the dragons are the spiraling of our DNA. That's the plasma that goes from the plasma of the universe, right? The plasma that makes up the galaxies all the way down to our blood plasma. And so essentially what happens when we aren't connected to that space within us, then we start to be vessels for the gods and goddesses drama playing out in our lives. And they literally basically come into us, and then different characters, different people around us in our life start taking on the other roles, trying to bring us back into a state of wholeness and completeness, right? But we have to connect to that one true source and light within us, which we do through the child, which is known as the Christic force. It's the spiral force of coherence connected to us in our heart of hearts. So that being said, that's a little bit about twin flames. The next thing I want to talk about is soulmates. So soulmates are important as well, and there are multiple interpretations of soulmates. But as I have seen and experienced soulmate really at the end of the day is someone who we have made a contract with, to us, to essentially be our counterpart, right, on our path back to source, right? And not everyone has a soulmate per se, but anyone can have a soulmate. And what is important to understand about my sharing of of my definition or my experience, this download about soulmates, is that in stair-step evolution, right, there are multiple layers of, let's say, expansion until we get to source, right? What do I mean by that? Well, we look at everything that we're inside of right now, right? Because we are inside of something. We're on the earth. The earth is a giant body. We're all cells of that body. The earth is part of a solar system. There are multiple cells in that solar system, and then you keep going to get to galaxies, and then so on and so forth, in these larger and larger bodies, right? Same thing is true when it comes to spirituality, right? A lot of people talk about soulmates. There are also groups of oversouls, right? There's an oversoul, which if God, creator, source, the universe, that life force inhabits everybody, right? The same life force at the end of the day is inhabiting everyone, right? Life source is life source. Now, just like in a human body, right, there are heart cells, then there are stomach cells, and then there are blood cells, right? And so these different types of cells, and then as all these cells come together, they make organs, and then there's organ systems, and then we get the entire body, right? Same way, we are a multiverse. We are a blueprint of the universe, right? We're a microcosm. So the universe works in this way as well. There are different sections. So if you want to look at soul like a cell, and you look at an oversoul like a heart, right? And then there are increasing larger and larger identities or entities, I guess you would call it, until we get to a full body, and then it continues to expand from there. So a soulmate really is someone who has been contracted with us to essentially continue with us on our journey to become reunited with our oversoul. And then once we've been reunited with our oversoul, then there's an oversoul mate, and then so on and so forth, right? So this is why we can actually have multiple soulmates, because it depends on how far along, how fast our evolution is going, right? If we connect with our oversoul within a very short amount of time, because keep in mind, we're in the Aquarian age. Evolution is extremely accelerated right now. You can have lifetimes go by in a single day in this quantum reality. I know many of you are probably experiencing that extremely accelerated evolution, right? It could, 2 weeks ago could seem like years ago at this point, because we are in one of the most amazing, gifted times right now for soul evolution, right? This is why most of us chose to incarnate at this time, because huge, huge leaps and bounds can be made in our evolutionary process in a very short amount of time. And so this is how soulmates come into play. There's over soulmates, right? It's just the idea that someone on the spiritual path has chosen a counterpart. They've chosen each other to walk together on the path to be reunited, ideally with Father, Mother, God, Source within, right? Or at least a certain level of that, depending on how far you're moving along in this particular life. Then there is the idea of a twin ray. So a twin ray is specifically something that only manifests, first and foremost, when you are fully connected to Father, Mother, God, Source within, right? You first of all have to make that connection within you, because a twin ray cannot manifest until that connection is made within, because a twin ray, you have to be whole and complete within yourself to meet the twin ray, first and foremost. And the twin ray does not complete you because you're whole and complete within yourself. Twin ray specifically is someone who is on the ascended mastery path, right? The pathway to becoming an ascended master. And I'm not saying that everybody is on that path. I fully feel that everybody can be on that path if they choose. You yourself would know if you resonate with any of this or not. But specifically, the twin ray is kind of like, if you look into different spiritual esoteric systems, there is Christ and there's Magdalena, right? There's Arthur and there's Guinevere. There is, if you look especially into the Tantric Buddhist pantheon, there are always counterparts. There is Uranus and Gaia, right? These are divine counterparts. Now, they don't complete one another, but what they are is for their ascended mastery, they have chosen one another to, once they become whole and complete, to be that mate, that counterpart, to assist them in completing their soul's mission to full ascended mastery. So now lastly, I want to get into a little bit how this plays into the astrology right now, because this is really important. At the end of the day, on this, especially as we hop into the Aquarian age, the true soulmates, twin rays, if you want to call it, that are really at play big time on this planet are Christos and Sophia, the masculine feminine force of Christos and Sophia. And these two divine counterparts, these twin rays, are energetically playing out through a lot of people on the planet, like as an energetic force. Is kind of like the way that you could look at, let's say, a certain spirit can fill a group of people, right? If there's, let's say, there's a group of people in a city, they're all meditating, they're all being filled with the force of, let's say, peace, right? So the specific portion of the population of the planet right now are all becoming vessels for the Christic Sophia force, right? And this evolutionary force to bring us into the golden Aquarian age. And really what this has a lot to do with is because when there was the disconnection into the 3D time matrix, there was that fall into the lower time frames and those denser time frames, right? This was a split from Gaia's true counterpart, which is Uranus, right? And so as the Aquarian age returns, that divine counterpart of Uranus, is electrically bringing this evolutionary Christic force into the heart of Gaia. This is essentially a tantric sexual union between Uranus and Gaia. And this, as his electrical force that was castrated, you can look into the story of Uranus and Saturn. The son Saturn castrated his father Uranus, and this is what created the 3D time matrix, the cubic time matrix. And this is why we are going from, currently in the age of Aquarius, we're going from that 3D matter, veiled existence based strictly on matter to cosmic time, right? We're entering into cosmic society, going into quantum time. So this is also has to do with the Schumann resonance, why we get these heavy spikes of the Schumann resonance going on, because that electrical force from central sun beaming through Uranus is electrically, literally coming into Gaia and breaking down the trauma programming conditioning from the last ages, shaking it off and allowing it to come up for processing. And this is birthing the Sophia Christic force on this planet, right? This fully allowing this child, right, of that father Uranus, who also used to go by On, right? On and Anna, the divine mother and father. Uranus is a specific electrical cosmic facet of that force. And this force is charging into the earth to birth their child, which is Sophia Christ on this planet, which is that trinary force that reconnects us back to source. In terms of Mars in Cancer, because I did want to touch a little bit on that, this is also important as well, because what we're going through this next phase, right, like I said, over the next few days, couple weeks, we have all these planets going over Uranus to really allow for more electrical ascension all the way deeply into down into the bones, down into the core of our vessels and vehicles, to bring us higher and higher into our own value, our own knowing and connection of that evolutionary force within us, ideally, should we so choose it. And so a lot of that will be ramping up over the next couple weeks. Now, Mars in particular, there is a special facet of Mars being in Cancer for this, because this is like the spiritual warrior, the psychic warrior. And so when it comes to this path of deeper levels of wholeness and connection to that internal God source, there's a little practice that I want to share with you all, because the psychic field is more turned on at this time, is more enlivened at this time, because Mars being in Cancer, which has a lot to do with masculine and feminine counterparts. A lot of people don't realize that, but there is a lot to the masculine and feminine polarity in Cancer and how it plays out for those agreements between the masculine and feminine. And it also has to do with that psychic field, that astral field that's connected in there. And with Mars in there, this really turns this up. Now, Mars doesn't necessarily usually like to be in Cancer per se, but this does bring our warrior mode into the psychic field. So what I want to say is, for each of you that are more sensitive to these energies at this time, you may notice that there could be tendencies for different energy centers to be leaking out psychic energy, looking for completion from someone else, or you know, psychic connections or twin flames or counterparts and things like that. What I would suggest is connecting to your energy centers in your physical vessel, all the way up to the highest of the heavens and down into central earth core. And when you notice psychically, you can close your eyes perhaps when you wake up or before bed, noticing these energies kind of start to leak out. A bunch of thoughts come in about something or someone or whatever. Could be in any chakras, could be sexual energy kind of leak